Hmm. Sure. Alt tech has its flaws, right?
Recording in progress.
Alt tech has flaws.
Recording in progress.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Hmm. Sure. Alt tech has its flaws,
I
right?
didn't say.
Recording in progress.
I, okay. All right. Yeah, well, it's hard, as with anything with Trump, it's sometimes difficult to analyze because he's been Captain Chaos this time around. It started out. I felt a little optimistic after the first onrush of executive orders, and he did. I think he pardoned most all the J6 prisoners. I had several of them on my show, but then I saw Joe Biggs, former Infowar guy who was one of the J6 prisoners,
Alt
and he was
tech.
very bitter on Twitter the other day and saying he didn't actually get pardoned. He's out, but I don't know if that meant this was community, but he was bitter at Trump and them, and accusing them of being too preoccupied with Israel, which they have been. And I tried to he hasn't answered me though. I'd love to have him on the show to find out what do you mean you're not pardoned? What exactly was it then? Because they're advertising it as a pardon. But given that, the other people I interviewed seemed happy and they're certainly out of prison. So that's a good thing. It's 4 years too late. He shouldn't have let them hang out to dry, but he did pardon them. Um, some of his executive orders are very good. And ones I suggested he do the first time, like stopping birthright citizenship, but that's already been overruled by a judge, predictably. So I guess that'll go to the Supreme Court. Things like changing the language to English, which is a good thing, but I don't know what that means. I don't, I don't think that anything's changing there. And excuse me, daylight savings times, did he really end that? I guess we'll find that out in the fall. Um, but lots of interesting things stopping DNI, DEI, and businesses and stuff. I mean, they all sound good. He trotted out some wonderful tax proposals, but I don't think anything gonna happen. I mean, first he talked about ending Social Security taxes, which I'm really for. That's Well, he eventually at first he said no tax on tips, overtime, or Social Security. Great. And then he said, well, let's end all income tax. Even better. And then he said, let's abolish the IRS. Even better. And then he tried out another proposal, which was good too, and it might work better, that no anybody making 150,000 or less pays no taxes. So that sounds good for 95% of the people or whatever that would apply to. But again, this is Trump just throws these things out there. He is doing more in terms of writing executive orders and everything, but I don't know how much is, and of course the Doge thing, I was very excited about it first because it exposed a lot of corruption and it got a lot of people angry, and I don't know why. I guess they don't want to see how corrupt their government is and how their taxes money is being wasted in a giant money laundering scheme, basically, where they're lining their pockets. But again, I don't know. Is it stopping there? He was supposed to audit the Pentagon. I was hoping he was going to audit the CIA itself and the FBI and HHS and of course the Federal Reserve. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know. You still hear Elon Musk tweeting about what they found, and and whatever he does, I jump on there. Not that he looks at my answers, but and I said, okay. I said, who's so who's what are we going to start the prosecutions? I mean, they have the USAID, the acting director of USAID, a holdover from Biden, an awful woman. Typically, they have an email from her that instructs all the employees there to destroy evidence so Doge can't examine it. And that seems like a crime to me. And I said, is that right? Okay. Okay. Is that right? Well, so far they don't have to worry about it. But and so as I said, here's an example. You have the person, you have to know who the individual is. You have an email from her, which represents the evidence. I said, when's she going to be prosecuted? And that this is the holdover from Trump 1.0. The Trump Inside Project is that nothing ever gets done. The first person, excuse me, dang, sorry about that. I got the next person that the Trump administration prosecutes will be the first one he ever has. He prosecuted no one in his first term except his friends. His own Justice Department went after Roger Stone and Bannon and Flynn and all those guys. None of his enemies were prosecuted. He didn't even attempt to. This time, boy, he's got tons of them he can be prosecuting. I don't know when are Comey and McCabe and all these people going to be prosecuted. They know that they had a bogus collusion thing to try to frame Trump and get him out of office. They know that Hillary was at the center of it. She's the one that invented Russiagate. We know from a CIA memo that it was her idea. John Brennan himself said this is Hillary's idea to equate Trump with Russia. So again, they have evidence, but I don't see them doing anything. Just like we had, they got excited about the Epstein files and Pam Bondi, who was no Matt Gates. Matt Gates would have been really good. I was excited when he named Matt Gates, but shockingly enough, they they got rid of him. But Pam Bondi has a do nothing history in Florida, and she's starting out with a do nothing. She just keeps, like Trump, talking about doing this and doing that. The Epstein list was on her desk, and then she made a big production of that stupid thing in DC with Mike Cernovich, the worst people in alt media possible, walking around with an empty folder. It was nothing. I don't even understand what that was all about. Why they were given that to begin with, and it was nothing. And so where's the Epstein list now? I don't know. She bounces it back and forth to Cash Patel, who also talks about doing stuff but has done nothing. So we'll have to see if they start prosecuting people. I'll pay attention. But so far they haven't prosecuted anybody. And considering what they found in Doge so far, as I said, it's one thing to talk about all these, I don't know how many trillions in Social Security that are being paid to people that are dead, including people that died, 100 years before Social Security was founded. I don't even know how that's possible, but I said, okay, if this is true, if this isn't just made up, it's really easy to find out who did it and prosecute them because the payments are being mailed to some address or they're being sent to some bank account. So you either find out who lives at the address or who owns the bank account. It's pretty simple to do. I'm not in Doge, but I can't imagine that would have been what I was doing if I'm finding all these things. Okay, you're assigned to A through D here and whatever um, of these names, and you get on. I don't think they're doing that. I think again this is just talk, and it's fine to expose the fraud and corruption, but if no one is held accountable it's all for naught because it's just what good did it do? And you've got half of America that hates Trump so much they're mad that the fraud is being exposed. So I don't know. It was exciting at first because he was doing something, more than tweeting, but finding out what has really been accomplished, I don't know. I don't even know the status of the tax thing because I heard somewhere that the Democrats voted down the no tax on tips, but now maybe they're going to do it in exchange for not raising the minimum wage, which they never do anyhow. And I don't know about. I think the no tax on overtime was approved. Tax on Social Security, I have heard nothing about that. So, but everything with Trump. And when I'm writing, I try to do research. Like when I was writing about his first administration, trying to for some future book, just finding out what actually happened on any given subject was almost impossible because he says so many different things and his enemies say so many things. And then you have to search and say, okay, well, what actually happened? What, and I don't know. Half the time I can't figure it out. So I think we're looking at that now. What is actually happening? I don't know. It's been interesting, but again, until I start seeing people prosecute, I'm on Social Security, so if I'll know if they stop paying taxes on it, not that'll be great. But and if we get the $5,000 Doge check, that was real exciting when they talked about that. They stopped talking about it. So we see any of those things, and that'll be an indication that are not business as usual. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm. Hey, hey, Lamprey. Lamprey, sorry to interrupt, but the commenters on YouTube are saying they can't hear you. Your mic isn't coming through. Only Don's. I heard you. Can everybody else hear me? I'm not sure. Can the commenters hear me? This is Expat Aftermath coming to you from Florida. I don't know if they can hear me or not. Okay. Well, in any case, yeah, no, I mean, that's a really interesting analysis, Don. And what struck me is that your take on Trump on one particular aspect lines up with a blogger that I read who calls himself Raconteur Report at raconteurreport.blogspot.com. He had a whole post about the very topic you mentioned, which is Trump's failure to prosecute these people. And he did none of that in his first term, as you mentioned. He has not arrested a single person so far in his first couple of months in office. And we have, a lot of people that have been caught red-handed, with, committing black letter violations of federal law. So, okay, well, where's the prosecutions? Where's the arrests? That's a legitimate question to ask. There's nothing stopping Trump from arresting these people right now. So it does lead one to question whether he's really serious about reforming anything.
Yeah, and that's why you have at some point you have to actually do something. And of course, the impression on the other side tries to convey is that Trump is targeting his enemies. Well, he may target them to make nicknames for them and everything, derisive nicknames, but he's not prosecuting anybody. And the tariff things you mentioned, I think we do need tariffs. We need to protect our industry. But the problem is first you have to have industry to protect. So Trump is doing it ass backwards. Why he's doing that, and he's killing the stock market. I have money in the stock market. I hate what's going on. He's losing people because, and I don't see anybody saying the same thing I'm saying, but I'm saying if you're going to, the idea of the tariffs is to to build up domestic industry. The problem is we don't have any domestic industry
Right.
because of all the trade deals that Trump talked about. So first you have to build new factories and start building products.
Yeah.
So once you do that and you have domestic competition, then you can put the tariffs on if you want.
Yeah.
But doing it now is only going to cause price increases. And you see what it's doing in the stock market. It's stupid. It's ass backwards. And again, I can't, Trump can't be that dumb. So I don't know why he is doing this in this order. Again, nothing wrong with the tariffs, but because you need to protect the industry. But you
Mhm.
have to have an industry first. We haven't, I mean, what do we make? We make drugs, I guess. And
Bombs.
I, yeah, I guess you have
Obesity.
Sam
Ozempic.
Adams beer. I guess Sam Adams has a lot of different beers they make, but I mean, maybe some cigarettes are still manufactured here. But we don't make any electronics here. We do make cars, but a lot of them are tied in with you have Ford, owned by Honda, and there's I the factories in Detroit are no longer there, but build them up again. Gentrify the city. Was once a great city. Now it's a big, eyesore. So just one of many eyesores. So do something like that and have some products to compete with. But nobody's even talking about that. It's like, people are either just saying we can't have the tariffs, and obviously the market is reacting negatively to them. So it just, I don't understand what he's doing. But then, trying to analyze what Trump does, because he'll always, at some point he'll get my interest back again because he'll say something really great.
Right.
And I'll sit there and say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. I can't believe he said that." And then I'll get sucked in again for a second. But I
Yeah.
mean, what he's got to ultimately. I mean, so look at the JFK. We can talk about the JFK file releases, and there's some very interesting things in there. We'll talk about, but even there, where that was a good thing. I mean, there's still stuff that needs to be released, but what was wonderful about them is that Tulsi Gabbard, who I've always liked, she was responsible for making sure. I mean, I've looked at these files for decades. I'm used to searching these things, and they're almost always heavily redacted, especially if they're important. I didn't find any redactions on these. I mean, and that was Tulsi Gabbard, so that's a great thing. So people said, but what happened right after he released them? He goes and he does an interview where he said, "Well, I've always thought Lee Harvey Oswald did it." It's like, what? You just disagree with 99% of your base. What a stupid thing to say. And I know he doesn't think that because Roger Stone, when he first contacted me after he read my book Hidden History, and he ended up writing a foreword to it, the paperback version. He loved it so much he wanted to talk to me, and we talked. And Trump had just announced his candidacy, and he was telling me how much you're going to love Trump. He knows about all the conspiracies. And he's implying that, Trump would love my book, and so I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's a conspiracy guy. But again, when push comes to shove, he doesn't. Yeah, early on he'll talk about bombs being in the not in the Twin Towers and stuff. But if push comes to shove, he'll talk about Saudi Arabia. Same thing with Vince Foster. He'll say like, well, a lot of people think he was murdered, and then his second Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, is the guy who led the cover up into Vince Foster's murder for Kenneth Starr. That's the kind of stuff he does. That's why I call him Trumpenstein, and he just keeps doing it. And it's a pattern. It's very obvious, and it's very because he's. But the problem is he's the only show we have. He's the only opposition we're allowed to have, and the other side is so bad that we keep coming back to him because the other side's literally insane. And we're hoping, okay, can he do something this time? And he just, he'll throw a little red meat here or there, but okay, what eventually he's going to get accomplished here? So we'll see what happens. But I was very optimistic at first, somewhat optimistic because I loved RFK Jr. and I thought he might do good things there. And so far, again, he's been very quiet. I don't know what he's done. I really don't know, except for say that anti-Semitism was a sickness that is destroying America's health. I was like, what? What? That's what you're talking about, really? So I don't know, man. It's yin and yang with Trump.
Anything you say there, expat?
Yeah, no, very interesting. I mean, I would give Trump a little bit of credit, in certain areas, like, for example, I mean, changing the U.S. government is very hard, right? And Trump is not a monarch. I mean, he has these he has the power of executive orders, which is, the problem is, he can write an executive order, but it's not necessarily going to be implemented by the
Well, it can't be
bureaucracy.
enforced. That's the thing. Obama
Mm.
experienced that with a lot of the rural urban council, which that ties
Mhm.
into Agenda 21. It works in some areas, but not in others, depending on if the state and local officials want to, depending
Right.
on how much the federal government has a pull in that area, in that region, it's kind of wishy-washy.
Yeah, yeah, that's an issue if you're a Democrat writing executive orders. If you're a Republican, the issue is more of the federal bureaucracy. All these, the deep state, or the administrative state, as Steve Bannon would call it, can just slow walk your orders, right?
Yeah.
And again, I mean, we are only what 60 something days into his administration,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't expect him to do everything, but I mean, it seems like he's trying to do a lot. It seems like he's generally pushing in the right direction. When it comes to tariffs, I mean, that's a really difficult issue. I would say one thing about Trump, like probably the issue that he's been most consistent on through all of the decades that he's been in public life is tariffs. He seems to really believe that
Mhm.
tariffs work, and so I don't know. I mean, probably a lot of economists, most economists would say that he's wrong, and they'd probably agree with your interpretation, or your argument, Don, that it's better to build up domestic industry first. But I think Trump would argue that the tariffs are necessary to start building up domestic industry. And we're already seeing some positive results. Like I think Hyundai announced that they're going to invest like $21 billion in auto manufacturing in the
Yeah, but
U.S.
that's a foreign company. That
Mhm.
goes back to
No, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
that's the issue here is that
Well,
there's Toyotas that are being built here, but it's still owned by another country. I listen,
Right.
expat
well,
knows I've been shopping for a car the past 6 months, and I would love to get another American car because that's all I've ever driven. But then first, none of them are cool. They have all these gadgets and gizmos on it. We're notorious for making big V8 engines, not turbos, trying to kind
Hmm.
of like this half-assed mimicry of what Japan and Korea has done, and
Right.
it's fallen flat on its face. I never see a Chevy on the road. I don't know about you, Don. And
No.
a lot of these American cars have kind of embraced the whole environmentalist, and we got to electrify
Right.
our Cadillacs, and there has
mhm.
been a slow pullback, but not to the point where we can actually see some type of movement on that ground to really bring back American auto manufacturers.
Mhm.
Yeah. No. And I think the reality there, and I've owned mostly foreign cars in my life. I've owned, lots of Toyotas and Hondas and Nissans, and there's a reason for that. They hold up better,
Right.
and they're just, it is what it is, and that's,
Yeah, why do American
yeah,
cars
those are
depreciate so much versus the Toyota?
right.
It
Exactly.
doesn't.
Uh-huh.
To me, it's kind of it's strange. I drive a Lincoln, and brand new, the car was $60,000. It's worth $500 now. Yet my car can equally is
Yeah.
the parts are much cheaper than a BMW or a Lexus. It's much faster. It does what I want it to do. There's no reason for it to have such a low depreciation value versus a
Well,
Toyota
you're
or
right.
a Honda.
Well, well, it's perception, I think, too. The people just, and that's somebody like me too, but perceives, Japanese technology at this point to be better than what's left of American technology.
Uh-huh.
But the reality is, until you can build consumer confidence back in your product, this is what I always say. I would have bought a Dodge or a Chevy or maybe
Right.
a Ford. I don't know. But if they were much cheaper than their competitors, but I'm not going to pay the same price for a Ford Fusion as I will for a Toyota Corolla.
Right.
And that's ridiculous. And that's the thing. But if it was $6,000 cheaper, I might say, okay, let me look at that. But that's the problem is they have to know. I mean, just look at the highest rated cars and all that. It's consumer satisfaction, consumer reports, everything for decades. So that's the problem is that they're still living back when America did make great cars.
Right.
The 40s, 50s, 60s. I
Right.
mean,
Living
pretty
living
much
off the
it.
fumes of the past.
Yeah, yeah, when they made some great cars that lasted and looked great, and but then the Japanese came along, and Toyota. I mean, I bought a brand new 1977's first, when I just could barely had any money, but I had to have that 77 Toyota Celica liftback, 5 speed, AM FM standard. That was a big deal then. It was a really cool looking car, and it's 5 speed, and It was the top of the line that they made back
Well,
then.
look at Europe.
But
In Europe, they don't have all these electronic gadgets and all these, again, things that can easily break.
right,
You name it, like USB ports and the touch screen
yeah, yeah,
radio and the GPS. European cars, they don't have any of that. They don't make basic cars anymore for the average American. Like even a Toyota Corolla now. I wanted a Toyota Corolla. I think they look hot.
yeah,
I had a
good cars.
2002, well, my mother had a 2002 Toyota Corolla. She didn't change the oil for a year. Typical
Hmm.
typical woman not
Yeah,
changing
yeah,
the oil, but it
right.
ran fine even after changing the oil. It never gave any problems, anything of the sort. A new Toyota Corolla is between $35,000 and $40,000.
That's
The average car in the United States, I think, is $50,000. And if
it's
you look
crazy.
at other
It's insane.
countries, they don't build cars that are that expensive. I
No,
don't understand why. Well, I mean, we can get lost in the weeds on why, that they continue to build these cars that are even the most basic model is somewhat of a luxury. It would be a luxury 20, 30 years ago.
no, it is, and it just shows what inflation is because I think when my son bought a 2017 Corolla new, I think it was about maybe 23, something like that,
Right.
22, 23,000. So, I mean, that's just ridiculous. So it's what, it's double the price. That's the kind of thing that, and when I write about economics, like my book Survival of the Riches, is that no politician is, that's why, when Trump came up with that was a populist proposal. Nobody under 100 makes under 150,000 pay any taxes. Great. Go for that. I can't, and again, I don't know if he was, what what he just ate or his blood pressure dropped or something, because it was a really uncharacteristic proposal for him to make, and you'll never hear anything more about it. And certainly the Republicans have never approved it. And of course, Bernie Sanders and Democrats, they don't want to help the working class either.
Right.
So they didn't jump all over it and say, this is Trump's greatest idea. We'll support it. They didn't do that. So because they don't really want to do it either. But that's the biggest problem is that you can't have an economy that works. Certainly not a first world economy, when half your country has nothing. And you've probably heard me say many times, the bottom 50% of Americans make less than $28,000 a year. That's half your country, and it's growing all the time with every wave of these desperately poor migrants that grows because they don't have anything. How can you so when you're talking about cars, or we're talking about the stock market? I mean, 90% of the stocks are owned by 10% of the people. The stock market's irrelevant to that bottom 50%. They have less than 1% of the collective wealth. So and the reality is people doing, I know people that work in warehouses, which I did when I was very young. And, when I worked a blue collar job, I had a car and everybody there had a car. And now people that work in warehouses, very few, or places, things like that, make that kind of money. They can't afford a car. So they have to take a bus to work if they're lucky to have a bus there,
Right.
or worse, they have to Uber, which means, half of their daily wage is gone. So, I mean, that's just, and nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about what half the country faces. I think I'm the only one. And Trump is certainly not talking about it. He'll pay, just like, for instance, what I understand, a typical Trump was being a typical politician on no more taxes overtime. Sounds great, right? But the problem is, if you're looking deep into it, as I understand it, it only applies to government workers. So first of all, you're going to be hard pressed to find a government worker that works 40 hours, let alone overtime. They don't work overtime. So that's going to apply to almost no one. And all those blue collar workers, because of course he didn't say that when he was proposing it. All those workers are going to be looking, hey, cool, we don't, and they're going to find out, just like they did so many times with Ronald Reagan, who did the same kind of thing when he was in office. They're going to find out, well, wait a minute, this isn't what we signed up for. So that's the problem, is that when they said that $5,000 check, I said, look, I've been waiting all my life, and no politician has ever done anything to improve my life, not once. And if I got a $5,000 check from the government, which is a pittance for all the money they've wasted, but I'll take it. $5,000, those bottom people in the 50%, that would change their lives. But wait, there's another catch here. Now we learned, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but if it does, guess what? It's only going to people who paid enough taxes. So they estimate people that make less than 40,000, which again is more, that 50% of the population that has nothing, won't be getting it. The people that need it the most. So it's not going to happen. But if it does, it's going to be going to people that are already wealthy because, of course, they pay taxes. And so again, we still won't get it. And I don't even know if I'll get it because I don't know how basic is. I make nothing with Social Security and the little bit I get from my writing now. But I don't even know if I qualify, and if they'll count my wife's income or whatever. But um, that when I first started though, I said that would be by far the $5,000 would be more than I've gotten from the government my entire life. So we'll see what
Well,
happens. But
what was the value of the stimulus checks that Trump gave out in the first year of COVID, right? Wasn't it like
Oh, it
500 and
was
then
great.
1,500,
It was
something like
great.
that?
uh,
Like 2,000 total, something like that.
I was making a
yeah,
grand
but
a
it,
week.
well, yeah, okay, yeah, well, yeah, I guess it was that in lieu of unemployment or something because it wasn't because
Well,
I think the stimulus check, I think I got maybe $400 one, maybe was the most I
that's it.
got, something like that.
I
I was making a grand a week for almost a year.
Okay,
Okay,
but that
yeah,
was
but I'm talking about the stimulus check that
Oh
was
yeah, yeah,
written
yeah.
for
Well,
every American. Like
right,
I thought
but then
every adult
you
American.
wound up paying it in taxes at the end of the year. It was like you're just getting your tax money up front. I got
No,
blasted in taxes the following year because of that check. Sorry.
really?
well,
Yep.
it wasn't, and again, it wasn't if it had been if it had been $5,000, yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah,
Want something
yeah.
tangible, but we never,
Well,
again, you never get that.
no, I mean, it's also inflationary, though. I mean, that's the problem, right? If you write a check for $5,000 to everyone, it's just going to inflate the
Right.
cost of
Is
goods.
if people
Um,
got nothing, and most people threw it at their debt, if I recall.
well, which is a good thing. But now I think it's a brilliant proposal. When I first heard that, I thought because the idea was that Doge is going to use the savings from all the government spending that they're cutting,
Right,
and they're
right.
going to chop that up and give it back to the American public,
Wonderful.
as
Yeah,
right, which I just think is a brilliant idea. Now, Doge claims
yeah,
that they've already cut $130 billion of spending,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
a pretty big chunk of their goal
Hmm.
of what, like originally it was 2 trillion and then it was
Yeah,
reduced to 1 trillion. But
yeah.
okay, so they're 13% of the way there. I would love to see them just write checks to all the American people. But yeah, I mean, you wonder like whether any of this is actually going to happen. I mean, Trump, I guess he really did abolish the Department of Education officially.
And
Uh,
I don't know. I was talking about that today on my show because I had a woman on who was her and her daughter. They go to the school boards and argue before them and everything. One of those people, but do a great job. But I can't. Supposedly, I just
Let me
try to.
look that
If
up.
you're writing an article on it, go look and see what you can find. See what actually happened. I've heard tons of things. He's going to abolish it.
right.
Maybe they've already let some people go. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't, and because I don't know
What's the
that. I don't
truth?
think he can. I don't think he can abolish it by himself because the president. I don't think it can be abolished by
Um,
executive order. I doubt it.
he
But
can apparently there's a provision of the Constitution or federal law or something that allows him to stop the expenditure of funds that have been allocated by Congress. Right. So if Congress already, I mean, the Department of Education is well established. Congress allocates money for it every year. I think it's like their budget is $80 billion a year or something.
yeah,
So apparently Trump has the authority to actually stop that money from being spent.
The annual budget's $240 billion and only has 4,200 employees. That is crazy.
No, for
yeah.
the Department of
I'm looking
Education,
at the wiki article right now.
for the
Annual
DOE.
budget
So
240 billion, 238.4 billion to be precise. Employees 4,200 as of 2025.
That's insane.
that's
Last time I checked, it was 80 billion, so it must have really mushroomed in the last few years. But then of course, all these judges or legal scholars, whatever, are claiming, oh no, we can't do that. I mean, I
yeah.
think at the end of the day, Trump has to just kind of ignore a lot of these rulings that
Well,
are coming through.
yeah, it's going to come to a head because, and again, I think I'm the only one talking about judicial review, and
Mhm.
I wrote about it in American Memory Hole, my last book, where I talked about Thomas Jefferson's fight against judicial review, and when John Marshall just usurped the Constitution in Marbury versus Madison, and we've been under that yoke ever since because Jefferson was really the only high-profile public figure that said, "No, you can't do this. This is not what checks and balances mean. This is not what our intention was to have some judge just determine whether this legislation is constitutional." He
Yeah.
said you might as well have Congress determine it. It makes no sense, but Congress laid down and played dead then, and they've been playing dead ever since. And you've had imperial presidents, obviously too, that usurp their authority, starting with Lincoln, and they just issue executive orders. And it's a battle between imperial presidents and this ridiculous judicial review, where you have, I mean, the best example of that is we wouldn't have any immigration problems if Prop 187, which was passed in California, uh, back in a very different California in the early 90s, passed overwhelmingly, which would have done what we should have done all along. And that was, which I think Trump signed an executive order to this effect. But again, I don't know if it's done anything to deny any government benefits to people who aren't here legally. Very simple. You get them to self-deport. Passed overwhelmingly. What happened? It went to some federal judge to determine the constitutionality, which is judicial review, and he said, no, it's not constitutional. Boom. Will of those millions of people that voted for it thwarted. That's so. What's the point of even having referendums? Because when you have something like that, same thing with executive orders. When you have these tyrannical judges, and they're mostly tyrannical, something. So I hope Trump does stand up to the judges, because, and I wish he would talk about judicial review. I doubt he even knows what it is, but that's what they need to talk about, because both sides, the entire political process now is, can we win it in court? Can we go before a friendly judge?
Yeah.
That's not the way it's supposed to work.
No.
Where some judge gets to determine, okay, this is the will of the people is going to be determined by what president appointed this judge.
Right.
Right. And if Trump decides, I mean, Trump has plenary authority as president to deport illegal aliens, for example. Like, I just think it's ridiculous to claim otherwise. So if he decides to deport these criminal illegal aliens, and then some federal judge out in Hawaii stands up and says, no, you can't do that. So the entire like federal enforcement apparatus
Has to come to a grinding halt.
has to come to a grinding halt because this random judge in Hawaii says, according to his personal interpretation, it's unconstitutional. Are you kidding me? Like, that is a dysfunctional system. And I think the way to fix that is for Trump to literally just ignore it. I mean, because if enough of these rulings are ignored, then I think the judges are just going to stop, because they'll be embarrassed by their lack of authority.
Well, and he also needs to, again, I don't, this is the problem with Trump. He's not educated on these things to whatever degree he's sincere. I don't know if he has any people around him or not,
Well,
but
clearly
they should
not.
educate.
This goes
Of
back
course
to
not.
his first
No,
presidency.
he has some good people. No, he has a really good team this time. Though.
He has,
I mean,
he has
Stephen
better,
Miller's great.
he has better people this time, but they need to stress what they need to tell the people, at least the MAGA base, because they don't know what judicial review is largely. I said, I think I'm the only one talking about it. And this is not what we want. This is, the Democrats say we're a democracy, which we're supposed to be a constitutional republic, but judicial review isn't something that goes with a constitutional republic or a democracy, because the will of the people is thwarted under it. So you have to stop that. Trump needs to go to war with them, and he needs to do. And now Andrew Jackson backed down after he said it, but Andrew Jackson famously said he was the last one to stand up to him and said, "You've made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it."
Right.
And that's what Trump needs to say. He needs to say, that, hey, look, you know what? We're ignoring it. This is, I have the authority under the Constitution. Now, of course, the media will go crazy. The left will go nuts. They'll try to impeach him again. But that's the only way you're going to stop this. And that's the problem, is that, anything that Trump can get accomplished, he's going to have to get accomplished like that, because you get to work through this deadbeat Congress where you're not going to get a single Democratic vote for anything. And you're going to have a bunch of rhinos that are going to vote against anything good. So I don't know how you can get through Congress, because that's the way it's supposed to happen. But I don't think any change can come through there until the people throw these rhinos out. But then you have Trump. Look what he did today. This is Trumpenstein, what I call it, the Trumpenstein Project. It epitomizes what his problem is. He endorses the ultimate rhino again, Lindsey Graham, for reelection. In the same breath, just before that, he gets angry at Thomas Massey, the best congressman, and he's not even close to anybody. Him gets mad at him and says, "We're going to primary him and get rid of him." Now his entire base should automatically on that just turn on him, say, "What are you talking about? You don't want to back the best congressman we have, the one certain real America First Congress, the only one that told AIPAC to get the hell out of his office, wouldn't take Israeli money." But of course, that's probably pisses Trump off because he's Israel first, like no other president we've ever had. And then you go after this Lindsey Graham, who's never seen a war he didn't love, who would oppose any real MAGA stuff you tried to do. I mean, that's what's hard to it's hard to just have any faith in Trump when he does those kind of things because it's so obvious. And then I don't know if guys saw the same thing this week. What did he also do? He suddenly, inexplicably, pardons Devin Archer, who is this insidious guy who was Hunter Biden's former business partner, who stole like $600 million from Indians on a reservation. So I was like, what are you doing pardoning Hunter Biden's
Sounds like a Biden
partner?
thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. But you still can't pardon Edward Snowden. This is what I'm talking about. The MAGA move would be to pardon Snowden, but the Trumpenstein move is to ignore that and pardon somebody, the last person anyone expect you to pardon, Hunter Biden's. I'm surprised he didn't pardon Hunter Biden again. Biden already did. Well, I'm going to pardon him too. I mean, it's just that's what's frustrating and why I cannot stop calling it the Trumpenstein project.
Yeah.
You can't boil it down to art of the deal anymore because that the whole QAnon aspect of things. I don't know how many people are still kind of grasping at these ideas that this is part of this is part of
Yeah,
his move.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's trust the plan. I don't. I
yeah.
think that's a bit of a
No,
a stalwart. Like it doesn't work anymore because a lot of people who liked Trump the first time around and saw how he fumbled at the finish line or it was deliberate. I really don't know, but like the whole thing, this whole art of the deal aspect and this notion where we don't, we have to see the writing on the wall. We're not too sure. This is I just can't see it anymore because again, I hate to say that I keep looking back at his his first round as president, and I just can't get excited like I used to. And I don't know how much gas he has left in the tank. I hear his dentures like in his mouth now. So
66,
it's like really like,
78. Yeah,
oh, like, damn, really? Dude, he's speaking, I hear him speaking, and I just hear it sounds like an elderly person.
yeah. Well, he is. He is. I mean, he's. That's one thing I will always give him credit for. I mean, is it real? I mean, I don't know. Does he get some kind of artificial help? But he has energy I've never seen anybody have in a 78-year-old. He's got a bounce in his step. He never seems to run out of steam.
Right.
He never looks like somebody his own age. He's never nodding off or whatever, or just, walking like an old guy, whatever. And just so that's great. But, at some point, same thing like the MAGA people, they have to stop being satisfied with this winning. Like it's winning because Trump had so many people at a rally. That's who cares? That doesn't do anything for anybody. But that's what he's got them. He'll brag about how, or he'll continue to talk about how I won every battleground state. It's like, okay, what does that mean to the average American at this point? Who cares? You want to, that's great. Good for you. Okay. We got you in the White House and you claimed you're going to you made all these grandiose promises, even more than the last time. But, and what about the mass deportations? I can't figure out what's going on there. Both
Yeah.
sides have a reason to lie and exaggerate. The left is crazed and but nobody's talking about it now, but they were acting like he was, he's going in preschool centers and getting every little kid he could and deporting him, that
Yes.
breaking up families, busting into businesses and taking employees away. And that was what they were saying. And of course, the right is saying, yeah, we're going after everybody. And we're getting, and they both have reason to exaggerate. But from what I understand, the official statistics show that there have been, on average, fewer deportations than under Joe Biden.
Yes. Yes,
Well,
I
but
do
How do you
see that.
okay,
deport?
but
How do you do that?
well, right, but the explanation for that is that Biden let so many people in with catch and release uh,
Yeah.
that more of them ended up being deported, right? I mean, Trump, I think, is
Yeah.
turning more people away at the border, isn't he?
Yes. No. That's again. If we can trust anything
You have
that's
to
being
parse,
reported,
yeah, you have to
that
really
that
parse the numbers here.
yeah, that apparently has gotten much better. Okay, so that's wonderful. What we know, but the problem is, what about the 50 million or so, whatever, however many? I think there's at least 50 million, but however many millions of illegals are here, it's nice. I mean, like he made a big deal about
Yeah.
deporting those prisoners to, was it El Salvador, where they apparently we've helped them build some kind of mega prison and we're paying them. I forget how many millions. I just wrote an article about it. We're paid them. I think it was it 300 members of some gang or something supposedly, and we paid them I don't know how many millions of dollars to take them. That
I
doesn't
don't know. It
sound
seems
like
like a good
winning to
deal.
me.
No?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know why we're paying anybody anything. They should be deported. We should have troops at the border, which he talked about doing. They
Mhm.
should be deported. They can, go back to where you came from. And, we have troops at the border if you try to come back in.
Mhm.
That's how you have to do it. That's all you can do. You stop all government aid to people who aren't here. You've already revoked birthright citizenship. Good job. But if the problem is the federal judge already returned it, you have to hope your Supreme Court uphold you, but I don't have any because again, one of the many terrible things Trump did is for he had three Supreme Court nominations. Two of them, one of them is horrible. Amy Coney Barrett
Yeah.
votes against him all the time. Kavanaugh's hit or miss. Gorsuch is pretty decent. That's it. So you have so I don't trust it. Would you want to bank on Amy Coney Barrett upholding any kind of MAGA legislation? She hasn't so far. So I don't think she's going to support him on birthright citizenship. So we'll
Mhm.
see what happens, but again, that's on him. He had Judge Napolitano, who would have been the first civil libertarian on the Supreme Court since William Douglas, was pretty much begging him to be on there, and Trump ignored him. 4D chess again,
Mhm.
and so this is what you get for
Well,
he had a chance.
there's also, I mean, another angle to consider is that Trump, even though he says all sorts of different things, he seems to kind of just like shoot from the seat of his pants.
Yep,
I mean, he is he is a New York liberal, right?
yep.
Fundamentally, and I think he honestly probably believes in most of what he's doing, and he might feel that the sort of the populist right doesn't represent what his vision is for America. I mean, I think Trump is kind of pro immigration in general. He's one of the sort of
Well,
boomer con,
obviously with his gold card or whatever the hell he's.
right, is selling U.S. citizenship for $10 million or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
It's a very kind of an interesting policy, actually. But yeah, I mean, I mean, he's one of these boomer cons that sort of, like I'm against illegal immigration, but I'm for legal immigration.
Yeah, which is
Um,
not, it's ridiculous. We should have a moratorium. And during
yeah.
his campaign originally, he said that we need to stop all, I mean, we don't need legal. I mean, what difference
Uh-huh.
does it make? We have too many people already as it is.
America's full, I think he said.
Yeah, America's full. And again, the Great Replacement. Trump never mentions the Great Replacement.
Right.
He's called a racist, but he never talks about it.
Correct.
Why is everybody coming in non-white? Why is
Right.
that?
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, that needs to be talked about, and he might as well talk about it because he's called racist anyhow, even though he doesn't talk about it. But
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
Right.
I get accused of being a Trump fanboy more because my audience, and my base on Substack and everything, they almost all hate Trump now. I
Wow.
mean, I'm the biggest fan he's got left because I try to defend him here and there, but I mean, oh, they just can't stand him, and I keep
Yeah.
trying to say, look, I watched a lot of Frank Capra movies in my life, and I always hold out some hope, and and I said, if the guy does something good, I'll credit him for it. Yeah, I don't expect it. I'm very skeptical because of he's
Yeah.
got a pattern going on here. This is the second time around, but this administration started out different, and he actually had RFK Jr., somebody I wanted in there, Tulsi Gabbard I wanted. So he had at least two really good people. He tried to get Matt Gaetz, I think, in. That would have been three good people. So that was more than he did the first time. And I said in his first day in office this time he did more than the first 4 years than he did in the first 4 years. So he was trying to write the executive orders. Some of them ones I suggested he write, but
Yeah.
I don't think you can govern by executive order because with the judicial review you have, and you have the Congress that is supposed to create legislation. But how does he do that when he's got a Congress full of rhinos that don't support him? And that's why I said, I mean, Trump is the oddest character ever. He's taken over this one party, but the leadership of the party hates everything that he stands for when he has his America First rhetoric.
Yeah.
So it's the oddest thing I've ever seen. So they will, like the Lindsey Grahams and people like that, the uh, Johnson or whatever, these guys, the Speaker of the House, they will support him as long as he doesn't do anything he said he was going to do.
Hmm.
You know, when he bombs Yemen or whatever, yeah, they're right there with him. When he gives more money to Israel, yeah, right there with him. But let him try talking about the $5,000 Doge check and see what they do. Let him try talking about we really need to step up these deportations. We have to get serious about this and see what they do. And that's the problem we have, is that we don't have an alternative party. We have one man as a very flawed opposition leader who's 78 years old, and that's it. And that's all we have. And you have some MAGA people scattered here and there, but other than Thomas Massey, I mean, I love RFK Jr., but he's got Rabbi Shmuley walking around with a gun to the back of his head, and I don't know what he's done either. I can't figure stuff so far. He met with the food people. I don't know what he supposedly he got them to agree to do something. I can't figure out what it was. So maybe you guys know more than I do.
No,
How
no,
do
I
you,
don't.
today he was talking about Greenland again. I'm confused by,
Yeah,
I get it because of Russia and China. I understand Russian subs are up there. They've been up there for the past 60, 70 some odd years. Obviously, China has built up their navy, not a little exaggerated from a lot of think tanks. I don't think China's navy is as powerful as they say. As I joke, they'll take Taiwan with a flume from a pool float. They'll take Taiwan,
I don't think so.
and different trawlers and stuff doesn't mean that's their actual navy. But I'm a little perplexed by this affinity for Greenland and talking about it,
yeah.
making Greenland, I guess, a state or something. You have any comment
Protectorate.
on that?
Yeah, no, and that's I said at the time, and he did this. I think it was right before, I guess, his inauguration. Trump had, to my knowledge, had never talked about Greenland before, had never talked about
Right.
Canada becoming 51st state, never talked about taking the Panama Canal back, never talked about renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. All that came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and it had nothing to do with his MAGA, rhetoric. And I said, what is he doing?
Because most Americans were expecting more of an isolationist policy, which was what he was somewhat
Yes,
pushing
Um,
on
I,
his first
I'd like
term.
to I'd like to disagree with that. I mean, I remember that Trump started talking about Greenland in his first term. There was a lot
Okay.
of coverage
I don't.
about it. There were Wall Street Journal articles and stuff like, oh, what is this? Like Trump is suddenly interested. He posted a meme on his Twitter back in 2018 or something that it was like a Trump hotel surrounded by ice, in Greenland. And so Trump's been kind of eyeing Greenland for a long time, but he didn't really talk about this during the campaign. I think what's happening here is that Trump he has this vision, however coherent it is, I'm not sure, but he wants the United States to be totally, totally dominant in the Western Hemisphere. He wants to actually expand US territory so that we're the largest empire in the world, encompassing Greenland, maybe Canada. That came
Well,
out of nowhere.
wait till the drone strikes in Mexico, because what are they? They're now labeling the drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Like, well,
With
again, this the
cooperation from
Borg,
yeah,
they're terrorism.
Well,
They're a drug cartel. Let's stop, okay? And they were armed under Eric Holder, Fast and Furious, right? So let's chill with naming
well,
them and labeling them a terrorist strike, so you can go in and start drone striking,
yeah,
the
exactly.
Baja
Bombing,
Peninsula.
bombing Yemen, and then right after he that's the impression I got too, that he wants to expand. But again, I don't think that's something that people voted for him to expand. That we don't want an American empire. We want to withdraw it, America first. But even if that's his new vision, then what is he doing saying, it was early this week, that yeah, maybe we should rejoin the British Commonwealth? What? What?
I
I
think that
didn't
was
see
probably just
that.
something he said. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh
so
yeah, he
that
said.
that struck
Where,
me. No, it is something he said. That struck me as something he just says. Like I
yeah.
really don't see that ever happening or being
Well, yeah.
approved or anything. I don't know why he
Most.
said that.
I think that's what we can say about 90% of what. Why did he say that? It's like
Right. But
it's
but
almost
but
like he's trolling people.
no, I think that was a troll. And also remember, he says a lot of stuff to throw the media off and distract them.
Yeah.
But I mean, the things like, okay, he wants to sort of revive the Monroe Doctrine, right? He wants the United States to
Mhm.
drive China and Russia out of Latin America. That's the significance of this Panama thing. And he also talked about that during his campaign. And I think he's actually doing a really good thing there. I mean, this deal where BlackRock would take over the port infrastructure around the Panama Canal from
They
this
did,
Chinese
didn't
controlled
they?
company. Well, they announced the deal. However, now it's the closing of the deal is being delayed, probably because of Chinese pressure on the Hong Kong company that owns the port, which is Hutchinson
Which is British
Whampoa.
owned, by the way.
No,
Yes, it is. Trust me, I traded that stock.
it's a Hong Kong based company, so they're under the influence of China. I mean, it used to be British, it's Hutchinson Whampoa, but now it's totally a Chinese company.
Okay, okay.
I mean, it might have British investment. I don't know. It's a publicly traded company. But I think Trump is trying to create this fortress America that's not just confined to the United States, but actually, is the entire Western Hemisphere. And he wants to also, at the same time, like mobilize against China. I think that's the long-term plan here. Whether that's a good idea or not is up for debate. But he also wants to get Russia in our corner, which is, I mean, in that sense, he's listening to his MAGA base, because I think most MAGA people at this point have a more favorable attitude towards Russia. They want to have some sort of rapprochement between the U.S. and Russia.
Right.
I'm not sure how wise this is. I mean, I personally kind of understand a lot of the criticism of what Trump is doing here, but there is a coherence to his foreign policy in that way. I mean, this other stuff like bombing Yemen or whatever. I mean, this is just sort of routine for the U.S. I don't know that it represents.
Well, no, it is, that's the problem. It's business as usual, and it is routine, and that's the idea. Is Trump is presenting himself and the MAGA people that this is something different. And again, it gets into the reason he bombed Yemen is because Israel ordered him to, and
I
Israel
thought
ordered
it
him
was
to
because
bomb
of the
Syria last
ports.
time.
And wasn't
And
it
that's
because of the Houthis like
well, yeah, they're supposedly the
shutting
Houthis
down world trade?
I've never heard of them before. I mean, I make fun of these names they come up with all the time. It's like, wait, what happened to Al-Qaeda and ISIS and ISIL and Hamas and Hezbollah? They've got tons of different names for these things. I don't know if any of them are real. We used to call Al-Qaeda Al-Qaeda. I mean, what kind, you think a legitimate terrorist, a legitimate group of proud macho people name themselves something which translates in their language to the toilet? That's what Al Qaeda means in their language. So that's what these proud macho people did. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is an inside joke, but it gets to the heart of Trump's biggest problem. And the reason why so many of my people, my supporters, hate him, and more than any other stuff he's doing, is because I mean, you saw it. What did that picture? I don't know. I'm sure you guys saw it. But there was some recent dinner or whatever where he got up and held uh, um, Bibi Netanyahu's chair for him
Yeah.
and, and touch. I mean, that was very symbolic of the relationship, and that's I don't know if he was ordered to do that or whatever, but that's the problem. Is the guy is, and then he made this ridiculous thing about going to go over and maybe create a resort in Gaza. I mean, this is the fact that you had this situation where there's hundreds of thousands of people that have been killed in Palestine just in this latest attack, and we can't criticize it. The entire Republican Party, except Thomas Massey, and I don't know if there's anybody else that would criticize him or not. And in the Democrats, you got the squad who hate all white people. And so they don't really know the issues. They just look at it and Palestinians are non-white. So that's who we're sympathizing with here. But, if we can't criticize that, I mean, and then that's why it goes into the JFK files. The most noticeable thing about the JFK files is all the references to Israel. It's all over the place. Shocked me even. No,
That's.
I
Do you
don't
think
think.
that's kind of like? I find it hard to believe that Israel's behind the JFK
No,
shooting.
I don't. No, I don't think they were the main impetus, but I think that it's almost like, and it really this is just kind of really, and you talk about 4D politics, but something is going on in the last couple of years where I think they want because there's a lot of controversy now about Jewish power, which I've never seen it before in my life. They're talking about it in America and Israel and Zionism and all that stuff, especially coming from blacks.
Hmm.
I mean, you got the black with Kanye West and all the others. They're openly saying things that were never said before. And I don't know. I don't know what because like one of the memos that they released at JFK. It's an FBI memo, and it says at the bottom, CIA approves the release of this memo, except for the bracketed areas. And you can see somebody, one of the people that got the file circled, and all the bracketed areas have to do with Israel. So why would the CIA not? I mean, so I don't know if that's a psyop
Right.
that they just did that on person people so that they would think that. But we do know that at the time of the assassination, before that, JFK was engaged in a very powerful, angry exchange of words that had been going on for a while with David Ben-Gurion about Israel developing a nuclear weapons program. As far as I know, that's the last time an American president stood up to Israel and told him no, And I don't think Israel was because yeah, you had the Pentagon wanted him dead over Vietnam. The CIA wanted him dead because he wanted to abolish them. Maybe the Federal Reserve. Who knows? I'm still looking for the Fed hit memo that's supposed to be out there. I haven't been able to find it. So lots of people lots of powerful forces wanted him dead. But that doesn't preclude that maybe Israel, the Mossad jumped in and said, yeah, we'll be involved. We got a vested interest here too. I don't know. But it sure looks like those file releases, they were Israel is and the guy that was looked most culpable there was James Jesus Angleton. His middle name was Jesus, and he wasn't Hispanic, so you figure that one out. One of the weirdest characters the CIA's ever had. But this guy was the Mossad's man in the CIA. He was connected to the Mossad, connected to Israel, and we learned in these document releases that he personally recruited Oswald into the CIA as a 20-year-old Marine. We know that now, so no more question Oswald was the CIA. And he kept tabs on him for the next 4 years until he was killed and had a file 150 pages long on his desk on Oswald the week before the assassination. And he was his main connection in the CIA to Israel and the Mossad. And he was Oswald's handler, basically. So if you can figure what that means, I don't know, but I think it means something. And I think that's why you see this Ben Shapiro, this dual citizen Ben Shapiro, who's loyal to Israel, obviously, and not America, is going nuts over the file releases. I think it's because there's so many references to Israel. So he's making an ass of himself and losing what few, fans he has left by, still trying to claim Oswald did it. It's not going to fly anymore. And, there's people, it's so obvious now. And again, the great thing about Trump is that MAGA crowd, that 80 million or so, 99.9% of them know there was a conspiracy to kill JFK. Trump apparently doesn't because he's still saying Oswald did it, but that's Trumpenstein. So I don't know what that means, but I do think it's Candace Owens is another one, for instance, that talks about Jewish power in the United States and Zionism and criticizes Israel. And these are people on the right. And the problem is everybody in power on the right, all the Freedom Caucus except for Massey, they're all pro-Israel. And that's you can't be a real opposition party if you're going to continue to throw that kind of money at a country that's doing that kind of stuff. I mean, you just pull the plug and say, hey, you know what, we're not involved with this. We're not contributing to this anymore. But we can't even do that. I mean, what is it? Nancy Pelosi said that, she didn't say about a commitment to Social Security forever, but she said, we are committed to Israel forever. And I think another one said something like, even if we had nothing else, we're going to support Israel. It's like, okay, then you show who you're loyal to.
Let me ask you, prior to all this talk about Israel and JFK's assassination, did you come across a lot of articles and various books that tied to the JFK assassination tied to Israel, or is this more of a new phenomenon that you've come across?
No, it all comes from Michael Collins Piper, who was treated terribly by the research community. I knew him kind of. I just started, having exchanges with him, and he died very young, 55 years old. I don't know if it was suspicious or not, but he died young for whatever it was worth. I don't even know if he was that old. I don't think he was that old. No, he's probably 40 something, because he was younger than me, but it was a while back. But he wrote a book called Final Judgment, which was the first book to ever, the first time we learned about JFK's feud with David Ben-Gurion over nuclear weapons. Nobody knew about that. We had no idea about that. And so he built a theory around that. Again, I don't agree with this theory because I think there were plenty of people in power in the United States that had a reason to want JFK dead. And I think the conspiracy was born here in the CIA, the Pentagon, LBJ, plenty of people here that wanted him killed. But that doesn't mean that Israel wouldn't have approved it and wouldn't have said, "Hey, yeah, if you need any help, let us know."
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so. I think that's what happened. And uh, but for a long time, the research community and I was involved in a discussion on the big forum at the releases where, again, these researchers they're still recoiling and trying to explain all the references to Israel. No, it couldn't have been. Couldn't Israel could? And I just said, look, well, I don't know, but I do know the CIA we have that are on that memo that says the CIA approves the release of all the information except for bracketed items, and all the bracketed items had to do with Israel. So you tell me why would the CIA care about Israel? I can understand if they cared about their contacts or maybe a source in Israel or something, but no, this is all references to Israel. So explain to me what that means. Why would and then you have Angleton again at the heart of all this, who was connected like nobody else at the CIA to the Mossad in Israel. So explain that. I don't think they were the uh, the center of the conspiracy. I just don't think that's. I don't think that,
It doesn't
especially
hold
at
water.
that time. No, especially at that time. And now it might be a little more believable because Zionist power has grown. But at that time, they didn't have quite the power over the CIA and the Pentagon and everything that they do now. So I don't think they could have just, David Ben Gurion could have just ordered it. But I do think that they certainly, with people like Angleton, Averell Harriman, who, a lot of people think my friend John Barber told me Jim Garrison thought Averell Harriman was the trigger man for the assassination. So you had people like that had ties to Israel that, for whatever reason, but no,
So
I don't think that.
I'm ignorant when it comes to the assassination on JFK. I learned a lot of it through my
Mm,
father, and being an Italian American, he he's under the notion that it was the Italian mob that killed him because of the failure at the Bay of Pigs, and cites that he was killed by an Italian rifle that's only found in like the rural parts of
right.
Italy. I don't. Can you elaborate on that? Do you think that that holds
Well,
credibility?
no, no. But tell your father that the Italian rifle, the Manlico Carcano, that couldn't have been introduced. It wasn't a murder weapon, and it couldn't have been introduced at trial because the rifle that was found on the sixth floor of the depository that where Oswald supposedly was shooting from was originally identified, was found by two officers, Boone and Weitzman. They both signed sworn affidavits to the effect that it was a German Mauser,
Oh
as
wow.
I
Okay.
pointed out many times. And of course they were mistaken. But as I said, if that's an honest courtroom, if I'm the defense attorney, the first thing I'm going to do is say, Your Honor, I strike for a mistrial. We have no murder weapon. They said, What do you mean you have no murder? I said, Well, Your Honor, this weapon here has no chain of possession. The Menlo Tarcano has no chain of possession because the rifle found on the sixth floor, the legal standing for that were the sworn affidavits for the people who found it. And they both misidentified it in the exact same way as a German Mauser. So and there's no chain of possession with the bullets either. I mean, the magic bullet, there's no chain of possession for that. I talked in Hidden History in my book about how that thing was passed around by, by 50 people and nobody wanted it.
So like
Half of them,
the whole idea of Havana being the next Las Vegas, and that
no, no.
no, no, all
And,
right. I'm ignorant
well,
to this
no, no,
topic. So
no, and but more researchers would agree with you. But my book that I wrote with William Law a couple of years ago called "Pipe the Memo in Red," which is about Dean Andrews, Jim Garrison, and the conspiracy to kill JFK. We looked at unlike most of the researchers, I don't think Cuba had anything to do with the assassination. I think it was a smokescreen, and because first reason is because after the assassination, our Cuba policy didn't change at all. There was no second Bay of Pigs. Nobody tried to assassinate Castro. Castro outlived them all.
right.
And in fact, Cuba died as an American campaign issue. It was only an issue when Kennedy was president. Never an issue again. So what do they get out of it by killing him? And that made no sense. All of the figures, all these Cuban names that are connected to the assassination, they all came out of New Orleans, and I wrote about them in Pipe the Memo in Red. And these were all people that were, one of them ended up with a hatchet through his head. Got you. There's a lot of these people died that way, but um, they were people that were being manipulated themselves. and they were helping to set up Oswald, probably unconsciously, as the patsy because Oswald was under, I think, was under the assignment of the FBI or the CIA because he was probably with both of them. We know he's with the CIA now. That was his assignment, I think, at the time of the assassination. Was he was told to infiltrate a plot, a group of people were plotting to kill the president. And report back, that's how they implicated him. That's how they got him connected to all these people. And Jack Ruby was a part of that. And in fact, another great file release that it's amazing. There's a file that came out from the FBI that talked about Jim Garrison. And again, I think we've seen the document, but it's a document the FBI knew about it. That Jim Garrison had information, a documentation that in the summer of 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald used Jack Ruby as a job reference. So yeah, they knew each other. They knew each other real well. And so again, it's these are these are the kind of things that are out there. But yeah, I think that the mafia has always been used as a backdrop. That's I mean,
Still
it's
is.
possible that
Still, they still talk about crime families. They have little to no
mm,
power whatsoever in modern America. Yet
no,
there's
no, and the Italian mafia again, they've been unfairly, I think, um, portrayed that way. Where in Collins Piper's book, he fingered people like the Jewish mob, like Meyer Lansky. He claimed I don't know that Meyer Lansky played a big role at all. But that was again, Collins Piper was sold on the Jews did it. So but he did expose the fact that he was that JFK was arguing with Ben Gurion and so forth. But yeah, again, I think so. Again, everybody has their prejudices. So he was just looking that way. I mean, Meyer Lansky was a bad guy, and he was probably more powerful than most of the Italian mobsters. And they've unfortunately they built them into kind of a Hollywood career. They had De Niro and Pesci and all these
right.
guys. Forget about it. And
Hmm.
it's good theater, but I don't know. I don't think that because it's as you said, the mob today is, I don't know, they even still exist. If they do,
Right.
they don't have much power. But they certainly couldn't still be getting the media to cover up about this over 60 years later. Even if they somehow had the power then, which I don't, I don't think they had the power then. They certainly don't have it now. So you look at who has the power over 60 years later to still get the New York Times. When these files were released, the New York Times headline was something like JFK's, I mean, Oswald still did it. Okay, wait, what? So they're never gonna admit it. It's like they're never gonna admit the warp speed vaccine is anything great. They're not gonna these things are they're not gonna admit their mistakes. So all I know is when people ask me who killed JFK, I said, look, the only thing I can say for sure is they inadvertently proved it could not possibly have been Lee Harvey Oswald. So they lied to you. Now, you can figure out who did the lying and probably figure out, they're associated with who actually killed them. But that's where you start. Same thing with 9/11. When people say, I don't know exactly who did it, but I know that it wasn't 19 crazed Arabs with box cutters and plastic knives. So you start out from there. They lied to you. And that's what I think we need to do about everything. Let's say that first of all, whatever happened, what you're telling me is impossible. So let's go from there and let's try to. I don't know what kind of investigation you could have at this point, but I think these files did a pretty good job of shedding some interesting light. Like I said, it shows that Oswald was recruited and it also one of the files that was really weird. I don't even understand what it means. It's kind of an urban legend that JFK Jr. Had written a threatening letter to Joe Biden in 1994 for some reason and called him a traitor. Well, there's a file talking about that was released. I don't know what that means, but it's not an urban legend because there's a reference to it. So,
Why is there such a
JFK.
renewed interest in the JFK assassination the past 5 years? I actually should say since Trump took office during his first term. Why is
Yeah,
this all
no.
coming out now versus 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I think it's associated with Trump because Trump was saying stuff, especially in his first campaign. Well, even and leading up to this too, he was saying revolutionary stuff, something no candidate had ever said before, and he was alluding to these things. He was alluding to conspiracies. And so he opened the door for that. And there's tons of people out there, maybe not to my extent, but people out there that were receptive to his message were people that are is already a majority of the American people have always a solid majority have always believed that there was a conspiracy to kill JFK. So pretty much anybody that was supporting Trump was in that category
Right.
already. And so, and just, and when they, they saw the way the establishment reacted to Trump and so forth. And then you had the QAnon effect for a while. People were believing in that. And they had JFK Jr. at the
Yeah, he's
center of that.
alive. Yep.
Yeah, that he's alive. And so ridiculous. But I think that all fed into it. Because a lot of people believe that, that's when, I mean, I think it happened before that, but it's certainly in my lifetime. I was a very little kid when it happened. But I think that was the start of a tremendous downfall. I think the argument can be made that America was at its peak as a country in every possible way on November 22nd, 1963, and it's been downhill ever since.
Before we wrap up the night, we didn't get to discuss that much about uh, Zelensky and Trump's interaction. And I wanted what your opinion was on the interaction, what you see as far as relations go between the United States and Russia. Do you think they're softening? Do you think things are getting worse? I find it. I thought the Biden's exit strategy, overthrowing Assad, if you want to say it was a ploy before Biden left term, kind of a scorched earth policy, making things much harder for Trump to kind of get a grasp and kind of situate himself as far as the Middle East is concerned. What are your opinions as far as our relations with Russia, and what do you see in the future with the United States involvement in Ukraine?
Well, I was very much entertained by the
It
theater
was
in the
very
White House.
entertaining.
That
Yes,
was
I
that was
liked it.
great. I mean, yeah, I mean, if he really threw Zelensky out, boy, that's great. I wish we had video of that. But I don't know because after it happened, did they still get more money? See, if they did,
Right.
then it's all theater. I don't know, but it was. And Vance was even tougher than him talking tough. So it was nice to see. And Zelensky's talking like Boris Badenov from the old Bullwinkle cartoons, and appearing like his little, and Trump is trolling from the minute he gets out of his limousine. So, oh, you see you dressed up, making fun of his ridiculous clothes, and that's Trump, and that's why people hate him and love him because the people that love him think that's great, and the people that hate him think, oh my God, he's so
Well, I
uncouth.
personally thought it was a language barrier. He was speaking English, Zelensky, and it's rare for me to see him speak in English because it's usually there's
Yeah,
a teleprompter.
yeah.
There's usually subtitles or a translator there. So him trying to speak English, I don't think he was trying to. He didn't necessarily know the proper words to say or get his point across. So I kind of felt bad for Zelensky for a moment there because I
Yeah,
live in
yeah.
I live in New York City, so I know how to read between the lines on what an immigrant's trying to say in English
Mhm.
and trying his hardest to speak English. So, I could see the way Zelensky exited. He walked out sullenly and a bit frustrated. But now what we're seeing is how Europe is making this more like a big uh, push towards war with Russia. You see a lot of propaganda pieces come out of France and England about what to do during nuclear fallout, et cetera, et cetera. So it's obvious that at least from what we're being told and what we perceive is America is pulling back from supporting Ukraine unless we get some type of mineral deal or BlackRock's involved. I'm not
Right,
too
right.
sure. Again, there's a lot of hearsay with that, but Europe is definitely now kind of like at a pivot point where okay, do we continue supporting Ukraine, which seems to be the case, but at the same time, Europe's military is hollowed out. They don't necessarily really have that much of a military. We've more or less subsidized a lot of the social programs in Europe because they don't have a military. Our military supports and protects Europe. I mean, we are NATO. I mean, by de facto. Even Trump was talking about the Greenland, saying Denmark can't defend Greenland from Russia and China. You need our support and our military to protect Greenland from these
Right.
aggressors, air quotes. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't know if expat has anything to say about it, but I'll let you guys take that one.
I don't really know what's going on with Ukraine, to be honest. I find it all very murky and confusing and contradictory, and I'm sure history will
Well, Zelensky
be a
made a
lot more
great
clear.
point that this is we're reliving World War I, but it's with drones now. It's just I see what the battle lines are like. I see what's being played out through various websites with GoPro cams. I mean, it's visible of what's happening on the ground, that everyone's just kind of in these trenches and just trying to avoid a drone strike.
Mhm.
So it's the battlefield. The actual physical, not this soft war, but actual, combat. The battlefield has certainly
Yeah.
transformed the past 10 years with drones and such. So I
Yeah.
find it fascinating that we're kind of living this strange transition of actual physical warfare, versus what we've been, subjugated to the past 20 30 years, with more or less like this soft war with its more psychological, more propaganda. So, you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, no, and I think that once when people ask me a lot about these foreign policy questions, I find it boring, to be honest with you. And that's one of the things that I liked about Trump, was that he concentrated a lot on domestic policy.
Right.
We need to take care of America first, and we have so many problems here. I like people, think yeah, I'm sympathetic to the Palestinians. I don't want to see anybody wiped out, but I don't want to go to war against Israel. I don't care. I mean, I can't say I don't
You care
care
about
that.
America.
There's Yes, there are
Right.
horrible things happening all over the world. And certainly that's terrible what's going on up there. But I don't want my money going there. Certainly don't want it going there to kill people. I don't want anything that we can put that money to better use here. Certainly $350 billion, or whatever we've given to Ukraine, that's ridiculous. What could we have done? You could clean up the streets, and the people that are living in tents out and crapping on the streets in San Francisco and LA. I mean, the vets that can't get health care, the people, again, that bottom 50% that has nothing. What could have done to infrastructure? This money is so better spent in America, but we won't put any money into it. Whenever there's a talk about building roads or something, well, we have to raise the gas tax. Well, where do we get that money to give Ukraine or Israel? At the drop of a hat, it's just there. We don't have to raise the gas tax for that. That's what I object to. Whenever they want money for one of their little war projects, and it's nonstop war all the time, and I oppose war in general. I'm a peacenik, and I just think that when you have the problems we have, you have cultural deterioration, you have an infrastructure that hasn't been touched for 60 years, you have disparity of wealth the world has never seen before in any first world country. I mean, we're a mess. We're an absolute mess here. We're losing freedom of speech and all our civil liberties. We don't know how many millions of illegals we have here, and even when they commit violent crimes, you've got half the population that wants to defend them and would rather call you racist for wanting to release them than feel sympathy for the person they killed. It's crazy. So I don't, I think Zelensky is a state actor. He was an actor, he
Yep.
was a crisis actor. He portrayed the
Comedian.
president.
Yeah.
Yeah, comedian. So, and Trump, we know, is in the WWE Hall of Fame. So, I mean, these are, when they look at these people have acting ability. So I look at it like it's interesting theater, but until I see something again, I'm still waiting for the first politician to do something to improve my life.
Oh,
Never happened once.
all right. So before we end, because now I realize an important thing I wanted to ask you, Doge. Elon Musk being involved heavily with the Trump administration. Do you feel perhaps this is a ploy to privatize and to further push more AI and to further,
Mhm.
weaponize a lot of, not weaponize, but privatize the public sector, where we're defunding Department of Education? Does that mean that we're going to have more privatization with schools? Because if you recall, during Trump's first administration, I believe the head of the Department of Education was the sister of Blackwater.
That's Betsy
Um,
DeVos, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and thank you, Betsy Davos. And with Elon Musk being so heavily involved, do we see like this whole situation with digital currency? Do you
Yeah.
see any of that? Do you think that's a little bit too far fetched? What's your 2 cents?
Well, I hope not. And again, when I started out, when Trump started out so strong and Elon Musk was saying a lot of great stuff, again, I said, look, I take everybody at face value until proven otherwise. Elon Musk was saying a lot of great stuff. I know his past. I've seen him with the Baphomet costume on with the upside down cross and his formerly hot mom. His mom was really a hot babe if you've seen pictures of her back in the day. But I think she's a practicing witch or something now. She's very weird.
Right,
And they're
and then
always
is giving
flashing
his
it.
daughter a bunch of numbers for a name or something too. That
Yeah,
was a bit
yeah, yeah.
strange.
Yeah, yeah. So he's very he's carries himself kind of like a rapper who he has, I don't know how many 11 kids by a bunch of baby mamas. I don't know. But he's so he's a strange guy. And he looks like he's on the autistic scale. And he's made lots of references to AI
But
being
he made
good and
most of his money
mRNA
through
vaccine.
subsidies. Tesla would not exist if it wasn't for American
Yes.
subsidies.
Yeah.
So he's beholden some way or another to like the
Yeah.
federal government and this kind of this Borg that kind of
He is.
propped up as a company in the first place.
No, and he should if he's honest. If he's an honest broker, then he will call himself out and say, "Hey, I'm as guilty of this." Now, I don't expect him to do that because how many people are honest enough to do that? But I liked. I said transparency is always a good thing. Finding out just a little bit we're finding out about how corrupt this process is. It's a drop in the bucket. Just imagine what the CIA and the Pentagon and the Federal Reserve, all that stuff would look like if you audited it. So of course I applauded that. But again, my almost my entire fan base, they just kind of said, "You're ridiculous, you're being naive," and they all talked about there. They're going to give us some good things, and they're bringing in the technocracy in the back door. They're going to chip us the digitalized currency. And of course, I said, "Look, you think I'm not against digitalized currency? I've talked about that a lot. Of course, we don't want that." But I don't see why we have to think that's going to happen because of this. I take it a step at a time. I see the transparency is great. Disclosure is great now, but again, without anybody being held accountable, it's meaningless. But I hope none of that stuff happens. But certainly, Musk's past is he never would. He was a darling of the left for a long time, and now they're burning his car. So I don't know. And there's Musk derangement syndrome is almost as powerful as Trump derangement syndrome at this point. So yeah, he's an odd. He wouldn't be my choice to lead, revolution for the people. But this is what we have right now. So we'll have to see. But we have to be on guard. I said, look, just be on guard. Don't let him chip you.
Well,
Don't let
I
him.
can't let go of what happened during COVID with all the vaccine cards and or the you will own nothing, be happy. I can't like I. It feels
Yeah,
so distant now, but and I think that's part of the psychological warfare that we kind of compartmentalize that in our mind and push it way in the back. But if me and expat once in a blue moon will be like, hey, do you remember during COVID this, that, and the third? Like, oh yeah, that's right, that did happen. So like
right.
I feel like Elon Musk is kind of a Trojan horse to let a lot of these bad ideas start to
Well,
propagate
a lot
under
of
the guise wrapped in an American flag, as we
right.
experienced during the Bush administration for the war on terrorism.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with you, and well, I have to say, I don't trust the technocrats. I don't trust Elon Musk. But again, this is we know the other side is completely insane.
Right.
The other side there, I mean, there's literally that was my old party, the Democratic Party. I was a Democrat when I first started out until I became independent, but I've never been a Republican. In fact, Trump was the first Republican I ever voted for. But they're insane. There's not a single Democrat that isn't evil that I know of in public life.
Yeah.
They're absolutely evil. I mean, there's 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
there's look, they don't believe in free speech. They're anti-white to the core. So I'm white. So how would I not resent that? So they hate anything traditional, hate anything that was once good about America. So I can't possibly support them. So this is what we're left with. Trump and Elon Musk, the RFK Jr. These are the people that we have. Tulsi Gabbard, and we have to hope that something can get done. And yeah, Trump is a he wouldn't be my choice to be a knight in shining armor. I mean, he's very flawed, and but
It's the best we
this
got right now.
yeah, he's the only one we got. So we just have to hope for the best. That's all we can do. And be on guard. Don't accept the fact they can't install this without you letting it happen. So you've got 80 million MAGA people. What you do is if that happens, turn on Trump all at once so he has no support. And Trump has shown an inclination before to back down. He flip flops all the time, but he's shown an inclination to flip flop if he has nobody supporting him whatsoever.
So any future books? What are you working on? What do you got cooking on the stove these days?
Well, I'm always working on something. Believe it or not, I'm working on a book about sports now, and because I've always been a sports fanatic, and I'm writing a book that will finally tell the truth about the racial dynamics in sports. No one, it's going to be my most controversial book, which is saying
Ooh,
something.
okay, cool. Have
And no,
you
I
ever
mean,
read Tim Toohey's book? What is it? The Fix is
oh,
in.
Brian, too. Yeah, I had
Brian
him on my
Toohey, thank
show.
you.
He beat me to it. And I'll talk a little bit about the fixed element because I think the games are fixed to a large degree. But what is amazing is that this is again is not going to be any kind of diatribe or it's biased or anything. This is going to be like all my books, going to be fully sourced. It's going to be full of numbers and statistics to make your head swim. Let's just put it this way: white men can jump, they can run fast, and you're going to see that the numbers you would not believe the white athletes that have been discriminated against that are faster, can jump higher, and were more productive in college, especially in football.
Tim
More
Tebow,
so
the
than
most
best.
discriminated football player
Oh,
ever,
absolutely, absolutely,
highest selling, most selling jerseys in NFL
absolutely.
history.
Yep.
And I'll never forget John Elway when he won that playoff game. John Elway
Yeah.
was so mad. I'll never
Oh,
forget it for as
yes.
long as I live.
Never heard of that in the history of sports where a team's general manager was mad
Mad.
that his team won.
Yep. And
That's how
everyone loved
committed they
him.
were.
His
I,
teammates loved him to death.
yeah,
Loved him.
yeah. I'll have the whole Tebow story in there, and
You mentioned it. I
it's a
think you
lot.
mentioned it in Bullyocracy.
Yeah,
One of
yeah, I
your
did.
books you mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah, but this will have this. You'll be if you're any kind of sports fan, you look at it and you say, wait a minute. It's like who is this? You would not even have heard of these white guys because a lot of them don't even get drafted.
Oh,
And
Tom Brady would be one of them. Well, not
you
your
know,
last pick, but you get the
well, yeah, he
point.
was the last pick, but at least Brady didn't have great measurables. I mean, he wasn't fast. He was a pretty successful quarterback in college, but no, but I don't think anybody thought he would be that good. But I'm talking about especially at the forbidden positions like running back, especially.
Yeah.
You got a kid, this guy Cam Scatabo, who should be a first round pick. He won't be because he's white. He had a 39 and a half vertical leap, which is incredible for a man his size. And those are the things I look at. And there's something also called RAS, which is a relative athletic score, which combines all these cone drills into an overall assessment of the athletes. And well, you'll see in the book, you'll see how. I mean, I'm not gonna say every, because any white player that is allowed to go to the combine and the pro days and all that, they have to be elite, otherwise they wouldn't be there because they're white. And to see how they dominate in those RAS scores, and a lot of the time they're faster in the 40-yard dash, they jump higher, jump longer, the broad jump, and they were more accomplished in college. They had better college careers, and they still get screwed over, and they're drafted after bums that are slower and did nothing, and a lot of times have character concerns where they were in trouble and stuff with the law. So it's going to be. I probably won't be able to find a publisher, so we'll see. But considering the other stuff I've written, but I'm telling you because nobody has touched this subject. Brian Toohey touched the fixed element. Nobody has touched the racial
Race.
discrimination against whites. So, and it'll be a first, and we'll see. I've been called enough names, so I'm ready for the names I'll be called. So.
Donald, absolute pleasure as always. We'll be in touch. Keep me posted if you want to do something on your channel sometime soon, and I'll send you this recording if you want to post it somewhere. All right.
Sure, sounds good. It's great talking with you guys.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
have a
you.
great night. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Bye.